Okay, well, we will jump right in. As we said, I'm Chip Buck, co-founder and CTO here at SAS Alerts. And today we're going to be talking about some of the fundamental options that should be considered when working with security settings and policies in the Microsoft 365 environment. We'll be discussing security defaults, MFA, and how to optimize it for your best results, the meaning and interpretation of conditional access violations, and we'll discuss what conditional access is, licensing needs and differences, a word about admin accounts, and then we have some time for QA. We've done this webinar a few times, and Ryan will be monitoring the first section of this, looking for questions. And if there's questions that come up in chat that he thinks are relevant in context, we may pause and just answer those right away. So with that, we'll dive in. So first, let's talk about security defaults. These days, ever since the fall of 2019, security defaults are turned on automatically for all Microsoft 365 tenants. But those that were created beforehand do not have security defaults turned on automatically. And if you're doing nothing else for tenant management, your own or customer management, you definitely should consider turning security defaults on for those older tenants. Security defaults comes with a collection of policies that include requiring MFA for every user, disabling legacy authentication protocols, and making sure that all admin accounts are challenged each time they log in. So as many of you may know, when you log into 365, you initially get your session set up in your browser. Sometimes that browser session can stay open for days, and that should never happen with admin accounts. They should get challenged every time they're trying to re-access after like a 24-hour period. Security defaults should be used for any tenant that does not require or desire the custom conditional access rules. And we'll talk more about them as we move along. Conditional access rules are required for granular control of account access. The 365 tenant must have a licensing plan that includes Azure Active Directory Premium. So when you're in doubt of where your licensing is or whether you have conditional access, set up security defaults at least at the very outset. And when you want to move to more granular and specialized access control, configure conditional access manually. But you got to understand, it's one choice or the other. They're mutually exclusive, and it's a binary choice. So let's talk about MFA, multi-factor authentication. It's the easiest way to add an additional layer of account protection and security to any SaaS product on the market, including obviously Microsoft 365. MFA can typically be set up, as many of you are aware, to use short message service or text messaging with a one-time code, to use an authenticator app from Microsoft or Google or LastPass, or there's actually many different authenticator apps out there, and they're all interchangeable when setting up MFA for authenticator apps. Built-in device biometrics like facial scanners or fingerprint scanners, or a hardware key, secure credential storage on a biometric or near-field key like a YubiKey. Hardware keys are the most secure way, very easy to set up, and very, very convenient to use. They, I think, have a fair amount of misunderstanding among people in the marketplace, especially the customers that we're managing or the people who are not particularly technically adept. They are thinking of a hardware key as something that's sort of burdensome that they've got to carry around and deal with, when in fact, once the hardware key is set up as the way to validate the third element of your login session, it's actually far easier than anything else you could do. You're not remembering anything, you're not fumbling with the phone, you're not opening an app, you're not typing anything in, it just instantly works for you. They are the path to zero trust SaaS application authentication. Zero trust, we may hear that talked about among lots of different people in the technology space. Microsoft talks about it, Google talks about it, Apple talks about it. The zero trust notion, what's called the FIDO2 platform, is the one thing that all three of those big providers agree upon. We have to be moving to a place where devices are not trusted and making sure that we get positive authorization and identity every time a person logs in or even goes to access additional resources. So it's important to use MFA for every account in every SaaS application. It's not just 365. It starts there because most of us use 365 as the entering point of our day-to-day work. But you've got other applications that you maybe use. Maybe it's Salesforce, or maybe there's QuickBooks or NetApp, or who knows. But we want to make sure that every SaaS application that we're using has MFA enabled to reduce the attack surface that's available for hackers to come and do their thing. When possible, you want to encourage hardware keys for every account, and at a minimum, you should absolutely demand hardware keys for any account that has admin access. So let's now talk about conditional access. So let's assume we've got MFA set up for everyone, which is great. And we want to move beyond the security defaults from Microsoft and move into conditional access policies. The nice thing about conditional access is it allows us to set up specific rules that will block access to resources if they're coming from an unknown geography or an unknown device, or they don't have the correct operating system or policy set up on the local side. So there's a lot of depth with which you can go to demand a better operating environment for the end user. But the way conditional access works is it first challenges for the normal credentials. So username, password, multi-factor authentication. After it evaluates the credentials, and only after does it look at the conditional access rules and say, okay, what is this person that we've now validated? What are they allowed to have access to? If conditional access blocks a user based upon its secondary set of rules, let's just say it's geolocation in this case, what that means is the username, password, and MFA have all been passed. That tells us that more than likely this is an account that's been compromised, and a bad actor has somehow discovered username and password and defeated the MFA in one of several different ways. A little too long for this discussion to get into how that can get done, but trust us, it can definitely get done. We see it happen every day. So this becomes a very, very powerful tool to watch and monitor. Make sure that you're looking for conditional access violations in system logs so that you can tell you've got an account that more than likely has been compromised. At the very least, you should be contacting the user or the administrator of that account and questioning that conditional access violation and making sure that you know everything about the conditions in which it occurred. So a word about licensing. So Microsoft's sales model is really to provide the basic Microsoft 365 features at a low cost, and they need to do that to stay competitive with others in the marketplace. Primarily Google Workspace would be the number one competitor, but there are other approaches too to providing productivity suites and a virtual office. Business Basic and Business Standard are the two that rely on security defaults, and that's really as far as you can go with them. The Business Premium licensing adds really important security features. And by the way, we're not shilling for Microsoft here. We don't make any money by people upgrading their licensing. But after years now of operating in this environment and managing a security platform that looks very closely at many different SaaS apps, we've clearly understood that at least a Business Premium or a P1 license is really necessary to add the security features that you need. Conditional access is one, cyber threat protection, anti-spam, advanced malware, safe attachments, DLP or data loss prevention through sensitive information protection. And the number one on the list, which is why it's in all caps and green here, is advanced anti-phishing and safe links. More than half of successful compromises start with somebody clicking on a link that's sent to them in a phishing email. That leads, especially in the past full year or so, we've seen a marketed uptick in the number of session token hijacks that are taking place, and they almost always begin with a phishing email that an end user clicks on, enters their credentials, and now the attacker is able to steal their session and simply log in as if they were that same user at the same time from anywhere in the world. Lastly, just a word about admin accounts. SAS Alerts has been around for we're coming into our 4th year. And we all know that MSPs need internal service accounts, admin accounts to work with their customer tenants. For anyone that's on the call that's not an MSP, that's an enterprise administrator, same thing. You need these kind of accounts to do your day-to-day work. We see thousands of accounts that are named with admin in the actual word, admin at somedomain.com, or customer name admin, or backup admin, whatever. This practice is broadcasting to attackers and intruders that these are the accounts to focus on. Other accounts might be easier to hack. They are less likely to be secured with MFA. They're more likely to be operated by a novice user who doesn't know what to look for. But the admin accounts that are visible to attackers offer a much richer target, and they're willing to put more energy into that. Some of you may be familiar with the break glass account. That's a term that's recommended by Microsoft for administrators to have one account that does not have MFA set up, has a very long and complicated password, should never have the word admin or break glass included in the account name, and it's there as the ultimate fallback in case everyone else in the environment gets locked out. These accounts should always be monitored for any login activity. Break glass accounts are not designed to be logged in except in an emergency. And in that emergency situation, somebody should already know about that, and that login should be expected. So Ryan, you want to take us through a quick look at SaaS Alerts and how we address some of these issues?
Yeah, I'd love to. One of the things that we want to do, and I don't know if you want to bring up the actual SaaS Alerts manage portal and kind of follow along with where I'm heading. One of the things I want to do while you're prepping that, though, is we get a lot of feedback from our partners about some of the conflicts they have as far as setting up better security for M365 and SaaS platforms as a whole. Typically, one of the ones is it's really difficult to explain to somebody who's non-technical the need for something to protect them better if they don't see it as a threat vector. We see ones around like, look, I have a SOC, or I have a SIM, or MDR, XDR, whatever you want to call it, whatever marketing term is cool these days. But really, all those things do for us is add tickets to our queue that may or may not be an issue, may or may not require attention. So I'd like, if you guys wouldn't mind, in the chat or in the Q&A, give us some feedback about like, what are the challenges you see right now to keep you guys from looking for something that adds visibility and helps you secure these things further. Anything you can weigh in on, I'd appreciate, and I'll try to make sure that this is log fatigue. All right, so Paul, right out of the gate, there's a lot of stuff going on inside of these tenants, and especially as MSPs or even internal ITs of large companies, there are thousands and thousands of logs that happen a day. I think we're averaging for a normal tenant of 30 users, somewhere around like 4,000 logs a day, and a lot of them are innocuous. You don't care if they log in successfully from where they're supposed to be. You don't care if they upload a file, download a file, delete it, share things. All of those things are logged. So the idea of trying to get ahead of people's behavior, whether it's internal or external, Terry said you guys not use M365 because he saw your Google login.
We use both, Terry. We have to cover all waterfronts.
Yep. And it kind of makes sense for us to, because we're so heavy in the M365 monitoring environment, to silo our information. But there's a lot of stuff in there. A lot of it is innocuous. Some of it you don't care about. And it's really hard to whittle through and find the things that do warrant your attention. So there are tools out there that can help. Obviously, we are quite fond of one in particular. Carl's pointing out that there really is no good way to manage 100 plus M365 tenants with multiple admins and have the admin accounts MFA'd. And to that point, and to Chip's prior point, in some scenarios, you really even aren't allowed to MFA all of them. So that's necessary, but also terrifying. So that's kind of what we're coming down to. Chip just went through all the best practices of the ways that you should manage these things and pointed out, while conditional access policies are valuable, there is a fatal flaw in their design. He mentioned the token theft and browser hijacking that is becoming commonplace. It's becoming commonplace because conditional access policies are pretty much a standard for the mid-market enterprise. And MFA, while it is wildly underused, I think, what is it, less than 30% of accounts are actually enabled?
Just over 30%.
Just over 30%. Because those things exist, conditional access policies and MFA, the attackers found another way around it. And browser token theft and browser hijacking bypass the need for a login and thereby bypass conditional access policies and MFA. It's incredibly common. So knowing that it kind of sucks because you're like, okay, now what? If conditional access policies aren't reliable and MFA can be defeated, 30% for M365, Jonathan, can be defeated. What do I do? And the SaaS Alerts approach is pretty much built around that mentality. The things that we want to focus on is, look, what's the point in an alarm in these logs and having all of this data there if no one has the time to watch it? Like if you have to correlate 4,000 to 6,000 alerts a day to figure out which ones are your attention, you're just not going to do it. It's like car alarms these days. If you live in a condo area, you just get annoyed when they go off. Nobody goes to figure out if their car is getting broken into. They're just like, damn it, I hope somebody turns that off. So what SaaS Alerts Manage is a robotic SOC analyst. It's designed to not have days off, not have rough days, and not get annoyed, and just aggregate and correlate data that might warrant your attention. The correlation part, you can see the red sitting in the IP locations there. We'll actually pull data and say, hey, not only is this a weird login or a weird event, but here's what we know about that IP address. Is it a known attacker or a known abuser? Are they using a VPN? Is it a known bogon? Has this IP address not technically been assigned to a familiar ASN? We'll bring you all of that information in a way that's easier to read. And what I mean by easier to read is if you see a spray attack inside of an Azure tenant, you're going to see login failure, like just dozens and dozens and dozens of them that you have to scroll through. Whereas SaaS Alerts will take that information and say, hey, there's multiple login failures, which culminate in an account lock. There's multiple account locks, which culminate in multiple account locks. We'll let you know the severity of these things in a single line, which makes it a bit easier to manage this information that's coming in. And you can set what's important to you. You can set what tickets into a PSA, and you can go beyond that and actually see what we would advise you do, and also automate the response, which is probably one of the most critical aspects. If you do have a SIM or you do have a SOC, they'll throw a ticket at you. And if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're asleep, then you're going to let somebody run rampant inside of your environment until someone has a chance to take a look. So what the Respond module does, which is a key part of our product, is gives you the ability to ticket into your PSA, whichever one you're using right now, or via an email connector if you prefer, and then automate out a reaction. And the reason we find this so critical is in most of the scenarios that I just highlighted and that Chip brought up, the browser hijacking, token theft, MFA fatigue, all of those things, you know what your tier 1 technician should do. You're going to retire those sessions, and you're going to block sign in, and you're going to reach out to the customer. So why do you need a person involved at all? Why can't you say, hey, if I see somebody log in from a new device from outside of an approved location, and the very next thing they do is set up an email forwarding rule, I want to go ahead and retire that session and block sign in. I know that's not them. Or if I see somebody logging in after hours where they don't normally work from an unapproved location, go ahead and take these steps. You can automate that out and let our system tell you, like, hey, this happened. This is the action we took. And then that ticket you get in your PSA isn't a call to action for you. It's letting you know that this has already been resolved. And your next step is to let the customer know you just saved their asses. Respond is pretty cool. It's automatic action for M365. It'll significantly decrease your ticket count for things that happen day in and day out. Last number that I saw from IC3, where 1.2 million emails are compromised every month inside of M365, which is an insane number to hear. But you'll have an immediate action, an antivirus approach to business email compromise if you leverage a tool that automates these things. Catherine, yes, you should be able to see his screen. We can see it. So you'll be able to leverage something that automates these things and simplifies your day in and day out, and obviously makes you significantly more secure for that. The typical ones we see are multiple authentication failures followed by a successful login, email forwarding rules being configured at weird hours, or ones that go to just their name like dot or parenthesis or something simple and very quick. So you have all those options to block, sign, and expire logins, reset passwords, enforce MFA, or just escalate the logging that you're getting so that you know you get visibility into these things versus digging tenant by tenant, which is really valuable. Now, what we started out with this product was just that, just the manage, just, hey, here's what happens. Here's your pretty map. Here's some red dots of the dangerous things that have occurred, which are really good to educate your customers and say, hey, these are the things that are happening. Shine a light in the dark corners and warn them that there are aspects of their security that might not be configured the way that they would like. And even if they think they're doing everything right or think they're too small for somebody to care about their data, they're wrong. People don't know what's behind there until they break in. And once they're in, they're going to take whatever they can from you just to make it worth their while. So being able to educate them, show them the things that are occurring, and then give them the option for more security and more visibility is wildly valuable, of course. Where we've taken it from there, which I think is pretty incredible, is adding 2 new modules, one of which is Unify for managed service providers. This is huge. You can actually correlate the data between your M365 logs and your remote monitoring and management tool, whether it's, the Kaseya one, Datto, Ninja one. I think we have Enable out now or close, Synchro. We're working on all of them, the ones that you guys rely on, where you can tell people, look, I don't really care where you log in from. As long as you're logging in from a device that has my agent on it, you're good to go. And we can see the operating systems. We can see the name. We can see if the agent is there. We can even see what phone operating system they're using. Synchro is incoming Mario. So that kind of gives you a little bit more of a decrease from that log fatigue that was brought up. Look, I know it's the laptop that I always use, and it doesn't matter if I'm in Dublin, Sydney, Colombia, or Bogota. Doesn't matter. As long as it's me, I logged in, I have my YubiKey in my scenario, we do use those, and it's my device. If it's not, if any of those things aren't met, Respond will automatically take the action to kick them out, block the future sign-in, and alert you going forward. Now, the last thing we did, and probably one of the biggest things, most of our partners have been very, very excited about this, is we've given you the ability to baseline, not only just to set things for security within the Fortify module, but also demonstrate the value of adding more licensing. So if you're trying to convince people to move to business premium, we can show them, hey, here's the things that we can do to make you more secure, compare them to the secure score they have, and then compare them to the secure score of other folks around their size and around their configuration with their licensing. So if you can imagine, and you haven't thought about moving past security defaults, how long it would take to configure a conditional access policy, geo-locking something down to just the country. For one tenant, it's not a quick thing to do. If it's your first time through it, you're going to spend more than an hour just configuring that basic conditional access policy. If you wanted to run through and do something like Microsoft's best practices for the anti-phishing, or like, blocking email forwarding outside of the domain, it's going to take you even longer. So let's just assume on the low end, it takes you 30 minutes per tenant to configure a good enough conditional access. And you've got 20 clients, it's 600 minutes just to get it going. Never mind the fact that you have to monitor for drift. You have to make sure when new people are added, they fall into those buckets. Fortify allows you to do that in single clicks. You can go in and say, hey, I like the anti-phishing policy, and I think I want to baseline that. I want to enforce MFA, and I want to baseline that. And you just put checkboxes next to the ones you care about, and then you assign them to the organizations that you believe need them and hit apply actions. So you're going to take 600 minutes worth of work down to 15 seconds to standardize your clients, which is what Chip is showing right now. Anything you want to add to what I just said right now, Chip, or carry on?
No, I think that's a good summary. I preloaded the report section so we can
Excellent. Thank you.
When you want to take a look at that and just take people through.
Yeah, let's do it. So that report section is going to be critical as well. This is where you guys have heard this before. I'm not going to be the first vendor to say this. It's a little bit different as an MSP to justify why they send you money. We know the phrase that if you haven't seen your IT guy, that means he's doing a good job. But if you've got to justify to people why they're giving you money every month, it's kind of important to show them what you're capable of doing for them and how you can make them more secure. So the reports that we've built out do exactly that. They say, hey, this is where you stand right now. This is what a licensing improvement could do for you. So potential scores by licenses there in the middle. And then here's some actions that we would suggest that you take. And here's the weight of the score that they would give you. So if you'll allow us to standardize, ensuring multi-factor authentication is enabled for all of your users, we can tick your score up a bit. If we put this anti-malware policy thing on, we can tick your score up a bit. These are the things that, as your MSP, I'm going to do to make sure that that system that you're in and day out, the one that has all of your critical data in it, is as secure as it can possibly be in a relatively consumable and comparable way. Like, people understand percentages. They understand the idea of credit scores, maybe not entirely as well as we should, but we get the idea that higher is better. So we give you the ability to demonstrate that and show people where they stand. Again, going along the baselining thing, seeing this report right here is also very eye-opening. If you do try us out and run through a trial, you'll have the opportunity to run this against yourselves and some of your clients at no cost. Go find out how many people really do have MFA enabled. And one step further, how many have self-service password reset enabled? I personally hate seeing MFA off and SSPR enabled. Because what that tells me is if somebody gets into one of their other systems, maybe their fallback is a Hotmail or a Yahoo address that you have no control over, and that's their fallback for Microsoft. If they don't have MFA on and they have self-service password reset on, then somebody breaches their Yahoo, sends a password reset request into that Yahoo, and they're in your tenant, and you have no idea, and there is no secondary way to confirm that until they've already done damage. Of course, unless you're using something like SAS Alerts, which minimizes SLAs and automatically responds to things that aren't SLAs and automatically. Gary's question, I'm going to answer immediately because it's an important one. So this only works with the business premium licenses? No, answer is no, it does not. We do encourage business premium in P1. And if you want to manage things like enforcing MFA and monitoring for MFA, you're going to need a P1 license. But if you have access to the admin console for the tenant, you can install SAS Alerts and we can aggregate this data and help you actually respond to threats. P1 adds an extra layer of visibility. John asked if the actions can be cloned across multiple customers. So I'll assume that was related to Respond, but I'll answer it for both Respond and Fortify. Respond, yes, you go in, you create what you want to happen, and then you assign what organizations you want to assign it to. You can do all except for, or you can do just these ones. And you can do it not just per organization, but for specific users. One of my favorite rules, and this goes back to the break glass account thing that Chip mentioned, is adding an extra layer of protection to those elevated privilege accounts. Break glass accounts, like we said, can't have MFA enabled and really should never be touched. So you can actually configure SAS Alerts to make it so that you have to be a SAS Alerts admin in order to leverage a break glass account. And you do that by going in and picking one of our templates that says, hey, if anyone ever signs into this account at all, kick them out. You're not allowed to use this account. So you have to be a SAS Alerts admin, go in, turn off that rule, and then go log into that admin account. Otherwise, you're not allowed to use it. And I think he's digging it up there, but that's the core concept of it. And you can assign that across all of the different break glass accounts you have across all of your tenants very quickly on one page. We are getting quite a few questions here, Chip, if you want to help me walk through them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ryan, to your comment, I assure you, we will not take up your full hour, but it was locked that way for questions. If you got everything you needed out of it, feel free not to stick around. So John, I think I got that one. Do you need a P1 per user per organization? It seems Microsoft wants one per user, but supports most features with one per organization. Chip, I know you have the talk track for that.
Yeah, well, the talk track is simple. Microsoft's policy is that if you apply a P1 in an organization, it should be applied to every single customer or every single account in that tenant. However, there are many MSPs that report to us that adding a P1 license to any single account in the tenant provides the P1 reporting benefits to everyone in the tenant. It's definitely a violation of Microsoft's licensing rules to do that, but a lot of people do it. So that's the full answer.
All right. Mr. Baines asked, what about phones managed with Intune? I don't know what our go forward plans are for the Intune part.
So we don't directly interface with Intune yet with SAS Alerts. However, when events hit the Microsoft security log that are a result of Intune configuration, they will show up in SAS Alerts. Perfect.
Matt, I'll take this question. Matt Root asked if they have the ability to create our own templates for Fortify, or do we have to use the templates that Fortify makes? Actually, you go ahead, Chip.
Yep. So today, Fortify actually doesn't have a templating packager that the MSP can use. So right now, all of the individual actions that are available in Fortify, these are all policy settings. There's 87 different policy settings that can be impacted using Fortify. All of them are available, and we have built some of those into collections. So you'll see the word collection after that, and that will be multiple different elements that are applied at one shot. So you can see it's probably going to be difficult to see all the detail here at this screen resolution, but you'll notice that there are 15 different actions that are taken from selecting this one anti-phishing policy collection. The next version of Fortify already under development. We expect it out sometime in October. will include the ability for MSP partners to create their own templates for Fortify rules, arrange them any way you like, name them whatever you like. We think the use case is mostly going to center around setting up specific rule packages, rule templates that are really aimed at different licensing models, so that you can just bring your customer directly to that licensing element that you want. We do include information about licensing right in Fortify, so what the licensing level that's needed, and we can make a determination to show only elements that the tenant is currently licensed for. I would need to drop this down to a single tenant to do that. Or to show all actions, including ones that the tenant may not be licensed for.
Perfect. Catherine, that should partially answer your question as well, as if this is package templates and alerts, or do you have to know how to build this all out? On both the Fortify side and the Respond side, we do have templates, some of which are the ones that we found the most beneficial and really good ones to kick off as a starting point. And some of them are actually,
don't forget them.
Yeah, and some of them have actually been built by our partners who said, hey, this is how I'm catching alerts, or this is how I'm catching threats. Logically has one in there where they actually, in the first month with us, and granted they have tens and tens of thousands of end users, they caught 20 business email compromises with this one, submitted it as a idea for the rest of the group, and it's in there for that reason. Is the data available via API so it can be added to customer reports? Answer, yes. Webhooks and API data is available, and you can tie that in and pull that data out to wherever you'd like to take it. Mr. Wardak, will E3 licensing work the same as Biz Premium, same functionalities? E3 actually goes above and beyond, so yes. Dan, what is the cost of this per month? We did want to stick to the technical bit, but we will pop something up if you want to ask for some information around the product piece if you're interested in it. We'd love to talk to you about it. And then Vaughn, how is this installed on each tenant? Chip.
So SaaS Alerts consists of 3 different enterprise apps that are installed directly into the Azure tenant. We can just look at what that actually functions like. Might as well take it through a demo because it's a quick process. Adding an organization takes all of about 30 seconds. I'm just going to give it a quick name here. Onboarding by MSP admin, that's us. That indicates that we have the correct credentials to run through the OAuth procedure. I'm going to skip over most of this stuff because you would get more of an onboarding look. Select the product that we want to onboard with. Approve and authorize the permissions. In the case of Microsoft, there's 2 different APIs that we connect to, both the Graph API and the Azure API directly. And that will take another 10 or 15 seconds to connect this tenant, and we're done. That's it. That's how you connect the tenant in SaaS Alerts.
Perfect. And John, thank you for that link for the M365 licenses. I do appreciate that. Can you integrate this with the 365 CSP to import clients?
You cannot do this directly with the 365 CSP account. It does need to be done with an individual admin account per tenant. And the reason for that is to ensure that we don't wind up with mixed and cross data. When we first built SaaS Alerts, we did include the capability to use a single CSP account to pull in multiple tenants. And we discovered that Microsoft occasionally, very rarely, but occasionally, would return data that was intended for one tenant under a different tenant ID. And when that occurred, obviously the data would be presented in the user interface related to the wrong tenant. So we had to back off of that approach.
Perfect. Roland asked if the secure scores are pulled from Microsoft secure scores and recommendations, or are we calculating on our own metrics?
That's a great question, Roland. And today, the secure scores are pulled directly from Microsoft. You'll notice when we drill in, let's see, it would be the reports actually. Hang on a second. You'll notice in the reports that we have a benchmark that we're collecting data on. Fortify was launched at the end of last month, August. And we're gathering data across a wide breadth of both MSPs and the size of the MSP, and also customer sizes, to begin to benchmark data that will compare one to the other. So right now, the Fortify score is 100% made up of exactly the Microsoft information. When we begin to get more information around benchmarking, we're going to blend that benchmarking score into a combined score of the Fortify score, the benchmark score, and give you an overview of how your customers and how your MSP is stacking up against the industry standards.
All right. Are you able to do simple tasks like disable account or change password for individual users or manage groups from the SaaS tools? Yes, that's the Respond module, and also the account management tool that we have inside of the organizations will allow you to do things like say, hey, if this person has never logged in, go ahead and block that sign in or delete that account. If these guest user accounts or licensed accounts have not signed in for the past 3 months, let's go ahead and lock that down because they still are an ingress point. You can do that per user, for whole groups, all through the platform. We're getting a lot of questions. I do appreciate the curiosity here. Is the admin account used to integrate with the tenant just used initially to create an app integration, or is that account stored and used for future actions?
The account is not stored ever. We don't store the account credentials. When you run through an OAuth sequence and you're connecting an application, and this goes for all of the applications that we connect to, not just Microsoft, an initial token is offered to SaaS Alerts. We store that token, and that token is requested by the product itself. In this case, you're usually talking about Microsoft when an API call is made. Microsoft also occasionally, and not occasionally, but randomly assigns a new token, and we have to store that token. But the account credentials themselves are never saved.
Yeah, Matt, we would love to go over that in demo with you. It's going to be unique to your configuration as far as parsing out your tickets to different customers. That would get a little detailed, and it would only apply to those folks that are configured just like you. And I'm reading this live. So it's my understanding that some third-party MFA options like Duo will not trip O365 MFA on flags. If we run these reports, is there a way to adjust the results of the reports to correct an error like this?
There's not today. So one of the motions that we have moving forward on our roadmap is actually integrate Okta and Duo directly, so that we can retrieve security information from the products. But Microsoft does actually not approve of, or what would be the right term? Microsoft doesn't validate MFA for security purposes if it's not their own. So if you're looking at, for instance, the Secure Score and Fortify, and you have MFA set up or you're using a third-party product, Microsoft does not credit points toward a higher Secure Score as a result of that.
Perfect. Pip, would you mind dropping back over to the presentation so we can show the links for those folks that would like to get more info?
Sure.
And I'll post this one in the chat. For those of you that would like to get your hands on it, at least try it out, feel free to click into that, and we will help walk you through an initial config. You'll get 14 days at no cost, no conditions to it, to go ahead and add your stuff, see how the product works, and test out this functionality. Talk to one of our team members that is in this every day and answer any other questions that might be specific to your PSA, to your RMM, et cetera.
Unfortunately, Ryan, I think I closed that.
All right, I can bring mine up if you prefer.
If I can find it. Yeah, I'll throw the share over to you if you want to pick that up. You could also pop links here into the chat.
Yeah, I did that, but here, let me pop this up on my screen. If you're curious, check out saasalerts.com/free trial, which I just popped into the thing. We'd love to have you follow us. One of the most important things to me personally, because again, I get to be responsible for our incumbent customers and the onboarding process. That SASE call at the bottom, and Amy, if you wouldn't mind popping that into the chat as well, that's open to all of you. So you don't have to be a partner of ours to join. We've had some amazing conversations with folks like Wes Spencer and Andrew Morgan. Really, it's a platform for you guys to come to us and tell us what you do like about it, what you don't like, where you're seeing risk and danger and how you're approaching it, and really just coordinate. We've got anywhere from 50 to 190 MSPs join us every week on Thursdays at 1 p.m. just to talk about the state of SaaS security, and how we can help and where we can improve. And we iterate quite often and improve this product as aggressively as we can. And the vast majority of what we do comes from these meetings. So we'd really like to have you guys join us and give us your feedback on how we could make your lives easier. So the question about pricing has been asked a whole bunch of times. It's a varying question depending on things like how long you want to commit with us, how many users you want to add to it. But I can say confidently right now, if you guys are curious, you can get this product for under $1 per user. Hopefully that answers the question enough to say, hey, this is the value of the product, and now you can equate a price point to it. And Catherine, if you are a CSP, that account that you need to manage or need to add to each tenant separate, that's the one earlier. You need to use an admin per tenant. A delegated admin will have some little overlap where you'll see data in tenants where it doesn't belong sometimes, and we haven't pinned down exactly why Microsoft does that on occasion. And I did say SaaS Alerts is under $1 per user right now. If you want to reach out, set up a trial, or talk to one of our guys, we can get you set up and help you out with that. The whole concept of this is it's not an expensive product. It does speed up your security, give you a better baseline, which we think is wildly critical.
Yes, it does, Darren.
Yes, and that includes the Fortify platform as well. Now, that being said, as we continue to iterate and release some other things, there will be some modules we will add that will pop that price up above $1 one day. But right now, you have the ability to get everything that we just talked about for under $1. And Elena, thank you. I'm glad to have you as a partner. So we've got 16 minutes left. If there's anything else we can answer, we'd be happy to do it. If not, we'd be happy to give you 16 minutes back, and we hope to get to talk to every one of you that sees this as a path for you guys to secure your customers better and simplify your day in and day out.
Phil asked how this applies to Azure AD. Phil, we connect directly to Azure AD, and many of the logs that we read and API endpoints that we query come from Azure AD.
Perfect. Amy, anything you want to shore up at the end, or are we good to go?
No, I think we're great. Thanks everyone for joining and for all the questions.
Perfect. All right. You guys have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thank you for joining us.
All right.
Thanks,
bye,
everyone.
guys.